At exactly 3:10 a.m. on September 21, 2025, a Ukrainian Bayraktar TB2 drifting high over Zaporizhzhia caught something strange glowing on its infrared feed. Two sharp heat signatures had appeared deep inside the Crimean peninsula, almost like someone had switched on a pair of hidden beacons. The AI targeting suite tagged them instantly. Too bright, too clean, too concentrated to be anything but freshly landed aircraft. Inside the dim underground UAV control room, the operators paused, their eyes narrowing. One of them leaned closer to the screen and whispered, "This might be it." Because if those engines were what they looked like, this wasn't just a routine landing. It was a doorway to a base Russia had spent months keeping invisible. The two Mi-8 helicopters had just returned from a long night mission, carrying more than 60 troops and equipment. As ground crews guided them toward the technical strip, the atmosphere on the tarmac was relaxed. Pilots slipped off their gloves, exchanged jokes, passed around a quick celebratory toast. None of them knew the heat from their engines was exposing something far bigger than their arrival. A single thermal signature, just seconds long, had given Ukraine a trail to follow, like tossing a sugar cube and waiting for the ants to reveal where they live. By 3:20 a.m., commercial infrared satellite confirmation came through. The signatures were real. In the Ukrainian command center, the room shifted from quiet observation to focused tension. Operators leaned in over glowing screens. A second Bayraktar TB2 was rerouted immediately and pushed low toward Crimea, dropping under the view of Russian long-range radars. On enemy scopes, it looked like nothing more than a faint speck drifting with the wind. But its camera feed told the real story. Two Mi-8 AMTs, two B-12 maritime aircraft, rows of fuel trucks, fortified storage bunkers, and a radar cluster that marked this as a fully functioning airbase. This wasn't a minor outpost. This was a key logistics node that pushed helicopters, supplies, and patrol flights across northern Crimea. If Ukraine took it out, Russia would lose early warning eyes, rapid troop transport, and carefully stored fuel and munitions. The strategic impact would ripple across the entire region. The Ghost Special Unit didn't hesitate. Surveillance shifted to a strike order. A covert drone formation already in the air was given its final course correction. At 3:25 a.m., they were 25 miles from the target and closing fast. Two UJ-22 drones flew high as deliberate decoys, broadcasting noisy signals meant to pull Russian air defenses toward them. Behind them, nearly invisible against the terrain, three Lu-196 strike drones skimmed low, flying so close to the ground that they almost seemed to glide through fog. They carried no radios, no external lights, nothing that would give them away, just a silent navigation script executed with absolute precision. At 3:27 a.m., the decoys entered the first Russian radar zone. A Podlet K-1 operator squinted at his monitor. "Strange returns," he muttered. The radar tracks didn't match birds, but they weren't behaving like cruise missiles either. His colleague argued back. Confusion spread for a few tense seconds before the duty officer barked, "Raise alert!" The room snapped to action. A nearby Panzer S-1 battery rotated toward the incoming blips. Within moments, its guns lit up the sky. Two blazing explosions followed as the decoy drones were torn apart. The Russian operators let out a collective breath. Some even allowed themselves a tired smile. They thought they had ended the threat. But the real strike hadn't even begun. While the radars reset, there was a momentary scanning blind spot, a tiny gap, just a few seconds long. The three Lu-196 drones slipped through that gap with perfect timing, racing so low that any higher grass would have brushed their fuselages. It was the kind of flight path that required absolute trust from the Ukrainian operators. One slip in timing, one wrong meter of altitude, and the drones wouldn't make it. But in the command room, no one spoke. They watched the silent icons glide across their tactical map like ghosts slipping between shadows. 5 minutes remained. On the Russian side, the atmosphere settled again. No new alerts flashed, no new threats appeared. The crew at the Panzer battery rechecked their systems with the calm confidence of soldiers who believed they had already done their job for the night. But the Ukrainian infrared feed showed what they couldn't see: 3 strike drones entering the final approach corridor, what Ukraine's operators quietly called the kill lane. The Mi-8AMTS sat exposed on the ramp. The 2 B-12S were parked dangerously close to fuel trucks. The radar array turned lazily, like a watchtower, unaware its walls were already crumbling. At 3:33 a.m., one Russian operator noticed it, a faint blip creeping along the bottom of his display, barely above background noise. His heart skipped. He leaned forward, tapped his screen, zoomed. "There's movement," he said, trying to keep his voice calm. The shift supervisor stepped behind him, saw the same flicker, and immediately raised the alert level. But events had already outrun their reaction. Deep in Ukraine's UAV bunker, the strike drones switched into their final sequence: terminal mode, no turning back. The first Lu-196 rose slightly, locking onto the Mi-8 cluster. The second veered left toward the tall central radar. The third aligned itself with the BE-12S and fuel lines at the eastern ramp. The operators watched their screens in silence. One Ukrainian pilot exhaled slowly, as though afraid a louder breath might disturb the moment. Another ran a hand down his face, nerves and focus mixing in his expression. 10 seconds to impact. 9, 8. The room was so quiet the hum of the servers sounded like wind. 3, 2, 1. The first explosion tore across the base like a sunrise made of fire. The Mi-8AMTS were erased in an instant, swallowed by a shockwave that flipped equipment like toys. A wall of flame rolled outward, consuming fuel drums and maintenance gear. The ground trembled as the helicopter's munitions cooked off one after another. A heartbeat later, the second strike slammed into the B-12s. Their wings shattered. Fuel ignited in a violent chain reaction. Flames raced along the taxiway, lighting up the night like a burning river. Russian crew members on the far side of the base ran blindly, some diving behind concrete blocks, others shouting into radios that suddenly had no clear command to answer to. At 3:35 and 27 seconds, the final drone smashed into the rotating radar. The explosion snapped the structure like a twig. Metal rained down in molten shards. The shockwave traveled so far that windows rattled in nearby villages. Some civilians woke up in panic, thinking an earthquake had struck. The base was gone. Within minutes, secondary blasts rippled through ammunition stores. Fuel depots erupted one by one, sending pillars of fire spiraling into the sky. Even satellite sensors hundreds of kilometers away registered the heat bloom. Russia's emergency network pushed out one final fragmented message: base under attack, radar destroyed, aircraft lost, and then went silent. By sunrise, the scale of the destruction was undeniable. The Mi-8AMTS were reduced to blackened skeletons. The BE-12S were melted frames. The radar tower was a pile of twisted metal. The runway was scorched from end to end. Analysts estimated more than $180 million in losses, but the real damage couldn't be measured in money. Russia had lost helicopter transport capacity in central Crimea. It had lost fuel reserves. It had lost its early warning coverage, leaving a 90-kilometer blind spot stretching across the peninsula. Supply flights had to divert, patrols had to pull back, and an entire sector suddenly became vulnerable to further strikes. Russian media tried to downplay everything as a technical fire, but satellite imagery and crater patterns told the truth within hours. Operation Ghost wasn't just an attack, it was a demonstration of a new reality of warfare, where small, silent machines could undo months of planning in a single night, where a hidden base could vanish before anyone inside even understood what hit them, and where the side that controls the shadows controls the battlefield. Because in this war, what you can't see can destroy you long before you ever knew it was there.